Hi, Boker Tov. This is Melech ben Ya'aqov, and I'm here near beautiful Sedona, Arizona. I'm going to play the flute for you once again, but before I do, this time I think we'll give a brief Dvar Torah. And what I'd like to talk about today is the name of Elohim, of God, why I believe it's Yehowah and not Yehovah. And our first piece of evidence is the name itself. We see that the name consists of three letters, Yud, He, and Vav, or Wow, whether it's a V sound or a W sound. We notice that the Yud is a vowel, or a half vowel, half consonant. Like in English, sometimes a Y is considered a vowel, and sometimes it's considered a consonant. And when you make the Y sound, the Y sound, you do not close your lips like a full consonant. The same applies for the He. The He is halfway between a vowel and a consonant. When we learned in school that H is a vowel, that may be the case, but really it's a breath, ha, like hello. Again, we don't close our mouths altogether like we would with a consonant in the case of, say, a D or a B, where the mouth becomes completely closed, which is the definition of a consonant. Therefore, if we're going to choose for this third letter of the name, whether it should be a V sound or a W sound, we can see that it would be more logical that it would be a W sound, where again we have the idea that it's a vowel and not a consonant, where we completely close our mouths. The same applies to the other name of God given in the book of Shmot, of Exodus, where Moses asks, "What is your name?" And God says his name is Ehyeh. And Ehyeh, once again, we see is Aleph, He, Yud. Again, three letters which are not consonants. They're interchangeable between consonants and vowels. They're really vowels because the mouth is never closed. Ehyeh. It's like a breath. The mouth is never closed. And that's another key to understanding the name of Elohim, that really it's like a breath. Yehowah. Ehyeh. There's nothing hard in it. There's nothing solid in it. And the breath is something very special, very linked to life, and very ethereal. It's yet part of this world, and it's not. We can't see the breath. We can feel the breath, and we know that the first thing that comes into us when we're born is that the baby starts to breathe. The last thing that happens before we die is that we take our last breath. So the breath is very linked to life. And we see that in the book of Genesis, where the Torah says, "Onasham bo nishmat hayim," and he breathed into him the breath of life, speaking about Adam, giving him life, making him the first human being, rather than all of the other animals and creatures that we see around the world. So that's our first piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence is looking at other Semitic languages. And if we look at Semitic languages, modern and ancient, as best as we can see, there's no V sound in the ancient languages, or in the Semitic languages. For instance, in modern Arabic, there is no V sound. There's only a W sound. The letter that represents the Vav in Hebrew, or the Wow in Hebrew, is actually a W sound. For instance, the word walad, which means child. Okay, it's not valad or vlad, the Hebrew equivalent, it's walad. So that's our second piece of evidence. Our third piece of evidence is the letter Wow, or Vav itself. And we see that very often the letter is actually used as a vowel. Okay, for instance, we have the word dod, which means uncle. Okay, there's no vowelization at all of the letter Vav, even though it appears in there. The letter is spelled Dalid, Wow, Dalid, but we pronounce it Dod. Therefore, when we take the consonantal form of that letter, we can assume that it does not get completely vowelized. It's like a Y or a Yud, which can act as a vowel or as a consonant. So if we were to take the vowelized form of the word Dod, we would get the word Dawid, which means David in English. In other words, the W sound is closer to the U or the O sound than is the V sound, where the V is a full consonant. We see that even in English, where we have U and W. We see that even the names of the letters in English relate the two letters together, U and W. And therefore, that's why I think the evidence strongly points in the direction of the name being Yehowah and not Yehovah. Again, let's go over our three pieces of evidence. The first piece of evidence is that the name of Elohim is all vowels, Yehowah, or Ehyeh. We see there's no consonants in it whatsoever, and we see that that represents something deep, the breath, the idea of something being in this world and not being in this world at the same time. The second piece of evidence is other Semitic languages. The Semitic languages that we know have a wow sound and not a vav sound, and we gave the example of Arabic. And the third piece of evidence is the letter itself. The letter often appears as a vowel, and therefore when it functions as a consonant in a word, we can assume that it retains that vowelization or that vowel-like structure, and it would be a wa, not a va. And this time, for a change, we'll use a different flute, the side flute. This particular flute was given to me by a dear friend of mine back in Yerushalayim, who's an expert in flutes and in wind instruments in general, named David Perkins. And this is the flute. This flute has gotten me through many times, difficult times and wonderful times, and often I would go off into the hills of Jerusalem with just my Tanakh and my flute, and I would read the Torah and meditate on the words of Yehowah. Hodu le Yehowah ki tov, ki li'olam hasdo.